I have two very special guests today, Antonia and Luis from Jimeco, and they traveled all the way from Colombia to come talk to me, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you.
You in America have a great saying. It says, all overnight fortunes took a long time to make.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
And I started, doing some drawings and post-its and
Post-its.
napkins and,
Post-
getting my...
That's something you see in movies,
Yes.
right?
For
Sitting at a
real.
restaurant on a little napkin
Exactly.
drawing something.
Getting my creative juices going.
Yeah, and here you are today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
How
I
things
still,
happen.
I chased her through, France. Then when she came here to the United States for her master's at RISD.
As far as design style too, European stylings or design, furnishings, whatever it may be, is becoming much more popular in the US now too, in the last so many years.
Yes.
When a crisis hits, every one of my people stood up and said, we will not let the company fail. What do you need from us? All we need for you is to protect us. And granted, everybody had hazmat suits. We
Yeah.
looked like Pfizer. We looked like Pfizer.
I want them to sell my product through my eyes with the same passion I do. And the only way for them to understand and to sell it the same way is to hear it from me, the designer.
Yeah.
Problems are quite an opportunity for you to make a good impression on your client. How do you pick up the phone right away? Do you replace a piece? Do you help them in any situation? That's so important.
Hello everyone, my name is Nadine and welcome to Design Discussions with Nadine, and I have two very special guests today, Antonia and Luis from Jimeco, and they traveled all the way from Colombia to come talk to me, and I'm so excited to have you here. I spoke with you and did a video with you in High Point, and I was highly impressed with your designs and your furniture, so I wanted to show everybody else out there, what you guys have to offer, get some information on your company, and talk details about all the fun things. So
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
yeah, it's wonderful to have you. So let's start off with talking about the history of the company and how it started, and we can kind of go from there.
Sure. Obviously, our parent company is Jimeco. It was started by my father in 1975, and it was there was a lot of luck involved, without question. He was an absolute newcomer. We're Colombian ourselves. He was one of 7 brothers. They came from a very well-off family in Colombia. But my dad said, you know what, I want to go out and see the world. So he ended up here in the United States, in California. He went to college from 1968 to 74. And then when he went back to Colombia, his mentality was very, very simple. It was like, oh my God, that's where the market is. Yeah. I gotta find something here in Colombia where I can sell in America and live very, very well here in Colombia and the whole thing. And he started very, very, very rudimentary with some artisans in Colombia that he pulled together with some exotic finishes. And then he went first to obviously to California, which he knew, which if you think about it, is kind of odd because for us in South America, with the exception of Mexico, our entry point is Miami. It's Florida. It's definitely not California or Texas for that matter. But it was what he knew. So he went there. He knew obviously everything in West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, the whole stuff where he had been, where he saw where the money was, where how the movement was, and remember he was there in California when California was the place to be.
Yeah.
68, 74, everything is going on over there. So he had a wonderful time. So he goes back to California with these exotic finishes, and he sort of starts hitting all of the stores, the Neiman Marcus's or the whatever elegant stores there were, and they told him, what, this is very high end. Those finishes. There's some people across the street who will like you. Who were those people? It was Sally Shirkin Lewis and Carl Springer when they were together for a short period of time. So, like I say, he was very, very lucky. So, Carl was doing some designs for Sally Shirkin. Eventually, they split. as the story goes. Obviously, this is above my pay grade, but it's kind of interesting because The old Carl Springer pieces that my father made, in the goatskin, mind you, are now being auctioned off at Christie's, at Sotheby's, at First Dibs. But it's kind of weird because at that time, when they did split, my father, being a newcomer and having J. Robert Scott as an established company, he said, you know what, I got to stick with Sally, definitely. Ironically enough, it's the pieces that my father made in that 70s, in those 80s for Carl that are now being auctioned off, like I say, in Sotheby's, at Christie's. To this day, we still get a sizable amount of business for that Carl Springer style, for that Carl Springer look. And obviously, fast forward to today, and we have presence across the United States, 16 different countries in Europe, the Middle East, what used to be Russia as well. And having expanded, obviously, the repertoire that my father worked with, people like Vladimir Kagan, also with Angelo Donga before he passed, Fendi Casa for quite some time in Italy as well. So my dad is an old timer. Okay, I bought the company from him right smack in the middle of the pandemic, which for 2 weeks it was me rolling over in bed. And when the ink was dry, it was like, oh my God, what did you do?
Yeah.
The whole world is shut down. You know,
you're buying a company.
You're buying a company. So
Those were some scary
moments.
Scary nights.
Well, and there was so much question during that time, too, of unknown of what was happening, what was going to happen in the world. So, wow, that's amazing. And then you mentioned, your dad was lucky, had some luck, but that doesn't just take luck. That takes hard work.
I agree.
Quality product, smarts, and the fact that he was looking for products that he can bring from Colombia and bring it here and then sell it. That was very smart.
And obviously it took a long time to put together,
exactly.
A proper team of artisans. I want to say also overcoming an idiosyncratic barrier as well for a lot of these artisans whom, when they sell enough to cover whatever expenses they have for a month, they have no business acumen whatsoever to continue to keep going. That this is for profit. I'm putting together a team of artisans that understood quality. This is something that takes years, if not decades. And if you ask me, it's still not over.
No.
It's ever evolving. But that's the kind of stuff taking us all over. And among that fast forwarding that I was mentioning is where I met Antonia.
Yeah.
I met Antonia.
It's fun actually because we met because of a Carl Springer desk. I was working in Paris. I just graduated from interior design. I did my school in Milan, and then I moved to Paris. And I was working for a very well-known French designer by the name of Shahan Minassian, who was actually one of Fernando's oldest clients.
Fernando is my father.
Okay.
Luis's father. And I was working for the remodeling of the Hotel de Crillon with him. And he had this desk because he has a gallery of vintage pieces. Also part of his business because he collects antiques and he sells them for his projects. He had this beautiful goatskin desk from Carl Springer, and I loved that desk. And he told me, look, this is a desk that was, this is a Carl Springer original, but it was manufactured by a company from your country. And they're coming in today, this afternoon, to show some finishes for Crillon. Why don't you step into the meeting? And that's how we met. He invited me to dinner that night afterwards. But I fell in love with those finishes and the craftsmanship and the history. So I mean, it was meant to be, I think.
Yeah, and here you are today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I chased her through, France. Then when she came here to the United States for her master's at RISD, and then and in those moments, sometimes it was even easier to get to Paris than it was to get to Rhode Island.
Yeah, it was.
But with so many stops, oh my God. But then afterwards, to get Antonia to go back to Colombia, after we got married, I told her, honey, why don't you design the collection, and I will make sure that I start marketing and offering the whole thing with our partners around the world. And we landed with our partners at E.J. Victor in North Carolina, where we had obviously especially my father had a friendship with John Jockin Sr. Because we shared many showrooms when they still had Ralph Lauren. We shared many showrooms in Europe, especially in Greece, France, Germany. So we knew each other because it was there. For example, there were beautiful upholstery on our case pieces, the whole thing. So I went out and sent all of our clients, the new look, guys. This is the new Antonia collection. Nice photography, the whole thing. This is what's going on. And out of pure chance, I was in North Carolina because we were looking to, now that Antonia was back home, she wanted obviously to start her interior design practice in Colombia. And I said, let's bring in, we know a lot of these brands, we do business with a lot of these brands. Let's bring these brands as well to Colombia. So I was in North Carolina, and my dad, I was under orders from my father to say, you gotta stop by and say hi to John, when you're there.
Yeah.
And we walk in,
and he had the whole collection printed out.
And he says, Luis, get over here. Very, very, very gentlemanly Southern, but Luis, get over here. Tell me what is all of this. Explain this to me. And Antonia, ironically, was there with me as well. So we explained the whole thing. He said, look no further. We want to make Antonia part of our family of brands. So yes, there's a lot of work involved, but you can never forgo the level of luck also that some people do have because of that.
And connections.
And the connections, of course. I mean, it's not what you know, but who at the end of the day as well.
A lot of things that start aligning.
Yes.
But the work behind it, sometimes people don't acknowledge that part, that it's years of work and preparation and, the legacy of companies that have done beautiful work for a long time, that all of a sudden things align and, they work.
You in America have a great saying that says, all overnight fortunes took a long time to make.
Yeah, and that's true.
So it's all of a sudden, oh my God, where did these people come from? Well, they've been coming, for 40 or 50 years. Only now did it actually, explode, come to fruition.
Yeah.
So it took a long time, but when those guys took it over, it was a very exciting time. We had never done High Point before, actually. We kind of skipped it altogether. We had always been focused on Maison Objet, the Frankfurt show, not the Frankfurt, the Cologne show in Germany, IMM, Munich as well,
probably.
Salone as well with Fendi. So we had shown at them, but we had never really shown here in America. And
but I would say that's because when Fernando's was part of the company, and I would say during the 90s and the 2000s, the market was in Europe, not in the US.
Yeah.
So they were focused in the European market, not as much as in the US market. But I think things changed a lot after the crisis, after 2009, where the market, Europe was dead. And the United States was sort of booming afterwards. So we had to take advantage of that.
And as far as design style too, European stylings or design, furnishings, whatever it may be, is becoming much more popular in the US now too, in the last so many years.
Yes.
With, I think that social media piece of it, people are now seeing different things that they haven't seen before, so it's becoming more mainstream here in the US too, which is good.
The accessibility as well. I mean, think of just the hurdle of getting our pieces have always been flown. I mean, we're one of the largest exporters, if not the largest exporter of non-perishable cargo by air out of Colombia. But it was still just air cargo. So if the plane probably flew to Miami, to New York, Los Angeles, and maybe Houston, and then thereafter the distribution was very complicated. So a lot of places, even in my father's best days, it would have been very, very impossible for him to go out and reach a Tulsa, Oklahoma, for example, where we do very well. We just came in yesterday from a good clientele that we have in Knoxville with the people at Gift and Gourmet. Never in his life would he have thought of, hitching a ride and going up to Knoxville, because even just the logistical factor would have made it very difficult to be successful.
But even for us, back in 2020, when we bought the company from your dad, we never imagined that we would be selling in Tulsa, in Knoxville, in these places where
they were just
not part of our mission, I would say.
Exactly, we just didn't conceive. And then there's this fantastic array of pockets of, let's say, not just wealth, but people that want to have something edgy, something interesting, something different. It just became such an interesting path after the pandemic. And the pandemic alone, for the same reason we had our ducks in a row, everything seemed to align perfectly for us during the pandemic. We had around the world, in China, in Vietnam, in Italy, here in America, every one of our competitors, if they could, they couldn't open. If they could open, they couldn't find workers. If they could find the workers, they couldn't ship. If they could ship, it would be stuck, just outside of Long Beach in California for, 100 miles and days upon end. And if you could bring it in, then you couldn't find the truck drivers to drive it.
Yeah.
For us, everything was aligned. We had, mind you, I told all of my team, I told them, listen, we only had to close for about 2 weeks. I told them, my mission is to protect you, but we have to take advantage. And in all fairness, I am proud of every one of my employees and every one of my team, because we were working Mondays through Sundays, non-stop. Non-stop. And when I say non-stop, I mean it. And one thing is for you and me to be sitting in our desks from Monday through Friday, but the person that is doing sanding, that is doing those guys are the real
physical laborers.
Well, I mean, our business is a family company made of families. So this is an intangible asset that only shows up when a crisis hits. Every one of my people stood up and said, we will not let the company fail. What do you need from us? All we need for you is to protect us. And granted, everybody had hazmat suits. We looked like Pfizer. But we were end to end working, taking advantage that all of our shipments were going on. Besides, we negotiated with FedEx a great agreement where our merchandise is in America 5 to 7 business days, regardless of the zip code, anywhere in America. So that thing just became fantastic. I mean, Colombia just became part of this, the 51st state, if you will. My company became, it just became so exciting. And we were taking advantage of that, let's say, all of that was in our favor. And it exploded, especially the Antonia collection, like we never dreamed of.
That's amazing.
So it's even when the situation became difficult with supplies. I remember this was early 2021, right?
Yes.
And everybody here in America started talking about, well, there's a shortage of this, a shortage of that. I have been coming to the United States since I was a month old. This is my second home without having lived here. I went to college, but without having actually lived here. And everybody talking about a shortage of this, a shortage of that. And I thought to myself, I even told with my wife, I said, these guys are exaggerating. Shortages in America, the land of plenty, impossible. So we were on a trip visiting clients
in California.
And I went in California and in Colorado. I went to a Lowe's, I went to a Home Depot, came out and told my wife, it's real. The shelves are bare. So I called home. I called to Colombia and said, listen, if this is happening in America, it's a matter of minutes before it happens to Colombia. So I told them, you break the bank and buy everything that you need for the next 8 months. Because otherwise, and again, I'm not kidding, it's also part of you could be foresighted but still not have the liquidity. So the fact that those things are aligned, you cannot say that there isn't a factor of luck there. I believe so. As smart as we believe that we could be, you still need that little extra.
Sure, I believe that too. Absolutely. Okay, so I want to talk more about the Antonia collection. It's absolutely beautiful. When we met in High Point, I had the pleasure to see it in person, and it's beautiful, amazing. So I wanted to let you go in a little bit more detail on the inspiration behind that. You told me a little bit about that when we met over there. And, I'll show some pictures on the screen for people so they can see the amazing work. What was your inspiration behind this collection?
My inspiration was, I had the opportunity to travel when I was very young to Europe, to the United States. So I had the privilege of being exposed to a lot of art and different styles, the architecture that I think allowed me to, expand my aesthetics further and find my passion for design since I was very young. And I fell in love with Art Deco and mid-century modern architecture. That was my absolute inspiration for this collection. And I think in no small measure, the Antonia collection portrays that, is that marriage between Art Deco and mid-century modern, with those soft, round edges and lines, but still with sometimes the intersection of sharp and, architectural details and geometrical details that bring that beauty in the collection. But it's also a finished story. With Jimeco, I was able to create these amazing pieces of furniture with finishes that were not that popular in the market, that were very in vogue back in the 70s, like the goat skins and the parchments, with the Carl Springer pieces that we were mentioning earlier. So my idea with the Antonia collection was sort of to rekindle the love for those finishes that were very in vogue back then, but for a generation like mine, were irrelevant. They didn't know about them. So bringing those finishes into a more modern platform, I think, was part of my whole idea with the collection.
I love the goat skin piece, and that's not something I've ever seen before either, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. How long did it take you to produce this collection, or how long did you work on it? I mean, there's a whole process when it comes to these things. It takes a lot of time and work.
Yeah.
So how long did you work on it before it came to fruition?
We started, we were traveling, visiting some clients. We were actually in Panama. And I started, doing some drawings in Post-its and napkins and, getting my...
That's something you see in movies,
yes,
right? Sitting at a restaurant on a little napkin drawing something.
Getting my creative juices going.
It wasn't a restaurant per se, but we didn't have like a large
notepad or anything, yeah.
Or you're not sitting at a drafting table or something
No,
like
it was
that,
like random.
Or maybe we ran out. I can't remember for the life of me, but we ended up using Post-its.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Large ones, mind you, but we ended up, because Antonia had it in her bag. But that's where it started.
Yeah. So I started doing some drawings, and then with some finished samples, I started, to create some mood boards. Then I passed them on to computer. I am a technological girl. My drawings are horrible. I will never show you those. But then I started working on the computer, and then when we got back home, we talked with the production team to how to develop these pieces. And I think that's part of the success of this collection, that I was able to work hand in hand with the manufacturing. And that doesn't happen to all designers.
Yeah.
So being able to do something and design something and propose something that is beautiful and it's elegant and it's timeless, but still functional and cost effective, because a collection has to be, profitable at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So I think that was part of the beauty about it. But it took us, I would say.
But there's a lot of hit and miss as well. I mean,
there is.
You don't. People just see the end product, but they don't know how the sausage is made, right? It was a lot of back and forth, finding her own footing, because she was obviously, Antonia had a wonderful background in all the projects that she worked around in Europe and in Colombia and here in the United States as well, but never product design.
Exactly, it's a different world.
Collection. So
because I did some product design and some furniture design for my own projects. But those were very specific. When you're doing a collection, you have to design for every single project and everybody's taste almost.
Yeah.
So a piece of my collection works in every environment, not only in an Art Deco or a mid-century modern, style project.
Yeah, it has to be commercially appealing. Mm-hmm. If not, it just becomes art, right? Something that people admire, but they don't.
And like you said, a little bit of different twists on the pieces, to where one might appeal to one person and then something else, so you can kind of expand to multiple people or multiple people's tastes. That's difficult to do.
It is.
Not only is it difficult, but you at the end of the day, as the collection evolved, the question then again it becomes, what are we actually proposing? What are we actually putting out there? It's not, 4 legs and a top in a table with an exotic finish. What the quintessential question. Why Antonia? Why does a person go in and say, I will buy that collection, or that's what I want to see in my house, or that's what I want to take in? And this is also a question that it has taken us quite some time to answer. And you're, in many cases, at the onset, you're ill-equipped to answer, because what can I tell you? At least my sentiment, or I think our shared sentiments, was we have something interesting here, but we don't quite know what it is yet. How do we present it? How do we make it our own?
Yeah.
How do we make it commercially appealing? How do we make it recurringly commercially appealing, rather than just a one-shot, one-hit wonder sort of a thing?
No,
how do
and
you keep it recurring?
Exactly. And not only that, but a collection that tells a proper story. Because at the beginning, we were just, it was very small. We had a couple of tables, a couple of sideboards, but that was it. When we were able to integrate the upholstery component to the collection back in 2019 with DJ Victor, and now with fine art, with the lighting, I think I was able to create that proper ecosystem that tells a story, that is cohesive.
Without it, we wouldn't have been able to step
Exactly,
back.
and to propose that lifestyle almost that I had in my mind at the beginning.
And it's really good too, because I'm sure, when somebody walks in and falls in love with a piece, somebody's mindset might be like, well, I don't want just one piece, I want my whole room. Right? So the fact that, that you have different pieces for, somebody's whole space.
But you hit the nail on the head. The Antonia collection begins with emotionality. It is the product of our, courtship in Paris for some time, which was one of, I think, the sweetest time in our lives before we had, obviously, our baby daughter. And this is where I believe that we want to take a further step. I don't know how, time will tell how successful we are, but we don't think of it as design. We think of it as a proposition. Why a proposition? Any person can sit down and jot lines on a piece of paper and call it a design. But once you take responsibility over the design and account for the emotionality, it becomes a proposition. A true proposition of value to the person that is getting it, to the designer that is introducing it, to the person that will have it in their home. In a world where no one takes responsibility and everybody's so worried about the emotional response, we embrace it. We want to be responsible for that. We want to make sure that it evokes an emotional response, so that a person walks into their home, sees their beautiful piece of furniture, and it always evokes that, oh my God, isn't this beautiful? Even if it's a small piece, even if it's a large piece. And I'll tell you this, even if it's a person that goes into the showroom and critiques it.
Yeah.
We don't mind.
But it happens
It
often.
happens.
And at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, but why would they do that? Just critique and say, you know what? I wouldn't add that detail there. Maybe I would do it
horizontally rather than vertically, or horizontally rather than vertically.
But then we understood that if someone takes the time.
That is in and of itself a victory.
They looked at details of it.
Well, exactly.
In and of itself, it's a victory. You don't go throughout all of High Point, for example, to use the
looking
example,
at what would you change.
Every single piece to see what changed. No, it's that piece caught your eye. And it evoked a response from you where you would say, it's great, but I would have done it, horizontally. Great! Wonderful!
Yeah.
You can do it. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But that means we did our job correctly. We made a proper added value for you to sit back and actually take the time. That, from where we're standing, is a victory. Is not a critique.
That's a great way to look at it, because a lot of people would get, offended, or they would feel bad, or they would feel, like, why doesn't somebody like, I made this and they don't like something about it. So that's really good that you can look at it from that perspective.
Well, we have the conviction as to why we did it. We understand why we did it. I think the team between design and concept to the nitty-gritty of manufacturing has helped us answer those kinds of questions with conviction.
Yes.
Okay, so when a person asks something like that, we were already there. We had that discussion already.
Already.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time, like I say, flip the coin completely. It's exciting that the person took the time to sit back and say, could have been better. Could have been better. Sure, but they don't do that with everyone.
Yeah.
They don't
right.
do that all across the board.
Yeah,
so that
there's
means
too
at the
many.
very
There's
least,
too many.
There's too many.
My point is,
I ask
Yeah.
you,
it's big.
that person will come back if only to see that there's something to see in that showroom. There's something to see in that collection. So they will be coming back.
And I like the fact that you touched on the emotional response, because I think with a lot of things, especially even what I do in construction, it's an emotional time for people.
It is.
And their homes, there's
It
an
is very
emotion.
personal.
Yes.
It is a very personal experience. I mean, I actually love to travel with my sales team, for example, to visit my clients, to visit the showrooms that are going to carry my collections, because I want them to sell my product through my eyes with the same passion I do. And the only way for them to understand and to sell it the same way is to hear it from me, the designer.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the success of the collection, I would say, because I am very involved in that part. I love being at the show. I love being at High Point. I love welcoming the clients and the designers and explaining them myself what I had in mind and why I did it that way. I think that's very important, and it's very valuable for designers because I can connect with them.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite piece? Or I'm not. That's probably
I have
probably
a favorite
tricky
piece.
question, right?
I mean, I have a few, but I would say my favorite one by far, it's called the Laurent sideboard. That was one of the initial designs that I made, and I love it because it portrays the essence of the collection, which is effortless luxury. It combines 5 different finishes. The top is in the goat skin, the body is wrapped in leather, the details are in bronze and in bronze sleeve, the interiors are in velvet. So there are many finishes that if I describe it, you would say, oh my God, but that's way too much.
Yeah, if I tell you that we're going to have leather, goat skin, leaf, bronze,
I-
velvet, you
yeah.
think it's the Picasso.
Yeah,
Of,
it's a
you know,
collage of
oh
a
my
potpourri
God.
of stuff.
What are you going to do?
But
It's how
when
you bring it together, though, that makes the
Yes.
difference.
exactly,
Well, it comes in
effortlessly.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite piece. I think it conveys the collection as I imagined.
That's great. Now, you have a pop-up shop that's going to be going on tomorrow, and that's exciting at
Yeah.
Ladco
Yes.
here in Houston. And how did that come about?
It's, let's say, in no small measure, with obviously these people at Ladco, they've been fantastic partners, true partners, and we take that to heart. Like I say, I bought the company from my dad, so I was born into this industry. I could still hear my father, us, when we came here to the US with my brother, just playing all over in every one of those showrooms. I could still hear my dad, sit down, stay still, shut up, because you're going to break a $20,000 table. We take those relationships to heart. We have, in many cases, had the same clientele since 1975, I'm telling you. So I have some serious big shoes to fill. And the reason, to answer the specific question that you mentioned with Ladco, is because canvassing left and right, all of the entire design industry, especially the showroom industry, the retail industry, the stores that have felt, in no small measure, overwhelmed by all of the technology, the whole thing, the appearance of a lot of things that they don't feel that they were prepared for. We sat back, we took a step back and said, okay, how do we make sure that these guys remain relevant as well, or how do we assist in that? I wouldn't take credit enough to all the credit to by any means as to that we have the silver bullet to keep relevant, but how can I, from where I'm sitting and standing, provide a proper partnership where we're going to fight together to make sure that you're relevant because your success equates into mine. So among those things is precisely the approach that we had with Ladco. And those guys were fantastic in the openness and said, yeah, let's do it. With their own proposals as well as to how to make it even more successful. But it's a proper plan that we are executing with all of our showroom partners to make sure that, again, we take also our shared responsibility for their success. Historically, what I have seen in many, many instances is that companies sell the showroom. The showroom, opens up their space for that. They sell the pieces, but then they leave it up to their own devices to see how they're successful. We want to help them. We want to be in the trenches with them. We want to take responsibility. I'm telling you, in a world where no one takes responsibility, we embrace it. We want to make sure that our partners are truly feeling that we are a preeminent partner for them, to make sure that we are there to help them, to assist. How do we make our collection successful with you? How do we make you successful with our collection? It's a shared responsibility, but we want to break the mold in that respect and focus on how we can help. So in no small measure, we put an exciting plan together for the events, but this is the event, I would say, is the, let's say, just the tip of the iceberg in no small measure as to the whole strategy behind it. A coordinated effort with their sales team, involving their sales team as well, because it's not just the showroom, let's say, owners themselves that are being overwhelmed, but even the sales team themselves that they don't know where to go, they don't know what to do. So it's bringing together, and it has taken some time, quite a bit actually, to put together a plan that would be useful, at the very least, to get the creative juices flowing, to provide some clarity of mission, to see, there's nothing transcendental in what we're proposing, but we are trying to make sure that there is a clarity of mission, okay, to help these showrooms and to help our partners make sure that, for one, the real estate that they've given us is warranted, okay? A lot of companies just take it for granted. They really do. So again, it's a question of the experience. As I was mentioning to you, we work on a premise where it's only 7% is the product. That's where the pop-up comes up, but it's part of a larger strategy. And we are beyond excited. We've been, just rolling around in bed around the office, the whole thing, as to make sure that what we have been doing with Latco, with obviously their scope, their outreach, let's say the professionalism of their team, which has been obviously welcomed, because we don't have all the answers either. It's been very excited. So the pop-up, but then the afterward, beyond the events, because sometimes people, everybody does an event, everybody gets, eats well, it gets boozed up, everybody has a great time, but the whole point was to make sure that the collection gets across, that people actually get to see it, that there's a proper connection and emotional response. It's a consolidated effort to make sure that Antonia and her collection, as well as Jimeco's collections, that they find a proper home and a proper footing and a proper understanding in the market where they are selling, right?
So that's part of the puzzle that we talked about earlier, about the different approach to making sure that your company is successful, right? And I'm sure there's a different perspective and system on how you guys are going to be doing things or have done things from what your father did with the change of times and all of that. So touch on just a little bit more on what is your approach to make sure your collection is seen, that your company has become more aware for people, because it's amazing. And
Look, we work on what we call, it's the business cycle chart, or the prism of the business cycle chart. To us, it's only 7% is the product, 38% is the presentation, and 53% is the experience. Yes, there's a 2% right there that is sort of like a gap, margin of error, if you want to call it that. But if you think about it, a lot of people put so much emphasis on the actual product, and they should, without question. The product is at the end of the day the last signature, tangible thing that you can touch and you can hold in your hands. But at the high end, the quality, for example, is a foregone conclusion. Anybody that walks into the Antonia collection, or anybody that carries an Antonia collection, a piece,
it's a foregone conclusion that the client should expect a high quality product without question. But it's only 7%. It's only, the importance of that is only 7%. They're already taking it as a given. Think of the presentation, the 38% and 53% of the experience. And we start everything that we do based on that. In our factory floor, all the way through to the sales, to the people that we select, to the people that carry us, to the attention that we give everyone throughout the line. And it's not easy by any means, but the experience is so important, and it goes hand in hand with the team that you select. You asked us, beyond obviously the manufacturing team, what else was involved? And my answer is, it takes a village to make a collection successful. Let's say the most understated line is it's about the people that you carry. I don't think it's just the people that you have with you. It's the right people. It's selecting the right people that have the exact same grit, the exact same passion that you pass along.
Yeah.
And I don't say this lightly when it comes to the same discipline, the same passion, the same culture that you have, from the person that is hammering nails into the piece to the sales person that is selling the piece with the same eyes. They're not salespeople as far as we're concerned. They are our ambassadors. Ambassadors who close, but ambassadors nonetheless. Ambassadors because they're passing through with the same eyes, the same passion. So just selecting the right people to be the person that is presenting our collection with the same excitement, with the same brands, then to go with the clients that they've chosen or that they've seen. We cannot have eyes everywhere, but we can have people that represent us correctly everywhere. That's also end-to-end part of the experience. And when problems happen, how do we address them? Are these the right people to stand shoulder to shoulder to be it a help the client resolve their problem, help the brand stand up, hold water when tough situations happens, because everybody talks about the good times, nobody talks about the hard times, right?
But problems happen
no matter what.
Yeah, in any business. That's
in any business.
that's
But
a
the
given.
question is not, that's also a given, exactly.
Yeah.
Problems will happen. The
But
question
they
is
are,
how you will address it.
exactly. Problems are quite an opportunity for you to make a good impression on your client. How you respond to those problems, how you address them. How do you pick up the phone right away? Do you replace a piece? Do you help them in any situation? That's so important.
Sometimes it's not even your fault. But
Right.
It doesn't
we'll
matter.
go to the slaughterhouse with them too,
Exactly.
because they're going to get it in the chin, and you're going to be there fighting it shoulder to shoulder.
I 100% agree, and I'm the same. I have the same approach in my business, addressing an issue, and then how do you remedy it? Is the important
Sometimes
part.
it's even more important, and your client most likely will come back for you for your work ethic, because how you reacted and how you respond to that problem.
But it certainly begins with the team that you choose. People talk about sustainability as if it's some kind of, let's say, just an ideal or some kind of electric vehicle, for that matter, or for the same token that they think about something sustainable and you have to live like the Flintstones. You want to start with sustainability? Think of the team that you have next to you. We are in a fashion industry at the end of the day, right? It can come and go. You have to still be edgy, still be interesting, but it's still fashion. We are under no illusion that one collection may perform better than another one. One may not perform at all. But how do you keep the company consolidated and sustainable? It begins with the team that will stand behind you, that will go to war with you, that will hit the ground, hit the stump.
Yeah. And not only our personal team, but I think the people we partner with to make this collection, with DJ Victor, with Fine Art, how these companies share our same values. These are the same family company family owned business, same as us. So they share the same values on how we want to carry our collections, how we want to carry our names, as a legacy, because these are companies that have amazing legacies.
And be responsible for it, because words are cheap. Anybody will tell you, oh no, it's about the client, oh no, it's how you respond to this one. But no one, in a world where no one takes responsibility for anything, okay,
you got to be responsible for what you say. You have to be responsible for what you do in that respect. No one takes responsibility for that. Go up, make sure, man up and say, yes, this is a mistake. Don't worry. We're gonna get through this. This is how we're gonna fix it. This is how we can or cannot do it. But by God, part of the problem is because people are not responsible for what they are doing. Make sure, and words, like I say, they're easy. It's your actions that make all the difference. Create a culture of discipline. Create a culture of this responsibility. We are going in. We go into, put it just mildly, Antonia is shy of 33 years old, okay? And every single time we sit down and design a collection, the first thing we put right smack at the very beginning is you have to be responsible for the fact that Jimeco has 50 years, fine art has 80 something or
over
90
100
something
years,
or over
yeah.
100 years, and EJ Victor has another 40 years. So lady, you have a cumulative 200 years that you are now responsible for. All of these people just put their faith of their company in whatever you are going to propose.
There's no pressure there.
No, but we embrace it. It is.
Yeah.
It's half of the people would shy away from that. Okay.
Yeah.
You have to be responsible and disciplined in this manner. Let me go further. We know that we cannot do it by ourselves necessarily. We have 4 hours a week. Unquestionable and impossible to change. 4 hours a week where we have outside advisors that basically I hire just to give us a hard time, to audit our work, Antonia's and mine, just ours, 4 hours per week. No matter where we are in the world, 4 hours a week, they're going to be hammering us to make sure that we are never in our comfort zone, that we're always pushing forward, right? If you had a good month, okay, how do you double it? Okay, so you're always thinking in terms of growth. So you're always thinking, keeping the creative juices flowing.
Getting better.
As far as I'm concerned, complacency is the first step towards, let's say, irrelevance at best, death at worst. Okay, especially in an industry that is all about the fashion. So we know we cannot do it by ourselves, but we are responsible enough and make sure that we take that responsibility to heart to surround ourselves with the correct team, make sure that they push us and to answer the tough questions. Nobody has ever in their life progressed by answering the easy ones.
That's
Nobody.
true. I like that.
You see?
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
and this is something I think that we shared, and part of what made us fall in love with each other without question. The commonality of what we lived. We both lived in Europe. We both went to, lived abroad, foreign schools, the whole thing. And it's, I think, in no small measure, this is a product of our own upbringing. My education was, I went to 13 years of British schooling, came to college here in the United States. I lived 2 years in Germany. So even though on this, without wanting to toot my own horn by any means, but I strive personally in my personality to be Churchillian in my resolve, American in my pragmatism, and German in my discipline.
No.
You see,
Yeah.
if I don't know how well I perform on those three all the time, but that's certainly what I strive for. And I know Antonia has her own, you see. So this is how you take responsibility in a world where no one wants to, okay? And that, sadly enough, and I mean that wholeheartedly, sadly enough, that is something that in this day and age is a lost art,
Yeah.
okay? And something that people value, where to me it's something that they shouldn't. That should be also a foregone conclusion. But if you're the only ones that are, then
We should be the ones standing
we should
out.
be the ones standing out.
Yeah.
We should be the ones leading.
That's it. You got to find something to make yourself stand out from others that do what you do,
Sure.
you know. And I am so happy that you guys came to talk to me. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Hope
Pleasure
you
was
enjoyed
ours.
yourselves. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Thank you again, Antonia and Luis. And until then, stay tuned for the next one. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.